Hi, I'm Robby B, adult child and para-alcoholic. The topic of this video is my second year in ACA, which continues from the prior video titled My First Year in ACA, during which I read the Big Red Book cover to cover and attended a weekly in-person meeting. I also kept my eye out for a sponsor because my intention was to work the steps. However, finding a sponsor in ACA was not easy. In any event, the delay worked out well because there's a lot to absorb in ACA. It took a good year to feel acclimated and to build a foundation upon which I could work the steps. As I headed into my second year, I felt ready, but I still hadn't found a sponsor, which was starting to concern me. That's when COVID hit, and in-person meetings seemed to shut down overnight, as well as my hope of finding a sponsor or working the steps. However, the shutdown was also the catalyst for a Zoom step meeting put together by a few fellow travelers I had never met. Luckily, a friend of mine knew them from another meeting and was invited to join. He accepted the invitation and then invited me. In total, there were 7 men, including myself. All had worked the steps in other fellowships. All had sponsors in other fellowships. None had sponsors in ACA. We agreed to sponsor each other. In ACA, this is called co-sponsoring. It's when 2 members who are on equal footing agree to support each other. In this case, it was 7 members agreeing to support each other. I went from having no sponsors to having 6, and together we worked ACA's Yellow Steps Workbook cover to cover. It took approximately 10 months. I should point out that this was a closed meeting as opposed to an open meeting. Step meetings are often set up this way to foster trust and intimacy due to the deeply personal nature of the shares, often about childhood abuse and trauma. The safer the member feels, the more they'll share. The only possible downside is if members drop out. Luckily, all 7 members stayed with it to the end and showed up every week to do the work. This included reading all the passages, answering all of the questions, and sharing the results of the exercises. At the end of each meeting, we would decide how far we would go the following week. This became our homework. So during the week, we would do the work on our own, and then on Sunday morning at 8 a.m., we would connect on Zoom and do it again, together. In other words, we didn't do the work cold as a group. We had all week to prepare. We then got to listen to 6 other men share on the readings and their answers to hundreds of questions. I believe I got more out of this than working one-on-one with a single sponsor, as I had done in Al-Anon. I'm not trying to discourage anyone from working the steps the conventional way. I'm just pointing out there are alternative ways to doing things in ACA. Step work in ACA runs deep, and it covers ground not covered in other 12-step programs. It covers childhood loss, emotional trauma, frozen feelings, stored grief, PTSD, as well as a full review of family dysfunction, including a blameless inventory of our parents, which would be considered heresy in AA or Al-Anon. There are also inner family members that we're introduced to, namely the inner child, who carries unhealed wounds from childhood. And these emotional wounds are expressed as the 14 traits of an adult child, otherwise known as the laundry list, which is also addressed in the steps. Healing the inner child is the primary focus of recovery, and there's an alternate set of steps that help us heal. Those steps are named after the founder of ACA who wrote them as an antidote to the laundry list, which he also wrote. We call these the Tonier steps, and they're woven into the steps workbook despite not directly mentioning them. This is the dirty secret of ACA. Tonier's widow will not give ACA permission to print them, but their spirit and essence is found throughout the workbook. Needless to say, this can lead to some confusion, and worse, it can hinder the healing process. I would encourage anyone working ACA's STEPS workbook to watch my 6-part video series titled The Inner Child Steps. This series examines the Tony A steps on their own. I also put out a 12-part series that compares the differences between the standard and Tony A steps. I would suggest watching these as you go through the steps, and feel free to ask any questions in the comments. For those who came to ACA from another fellowship, you likely know the set-aside prayer. Dear God, please help me set aside everything I think I know about myself, my disease, and the steps. Everything I think I know about program, the fellowship, all spiritual terms, and especially about you, God, so that I may have an open mind and a new experience. Please help me see the truth. Amen. I suggest you say this prayer before working the steps in ACA. With that said, please take all suggestions with a grain of salt. This was not meant to be an instruction video. Seek guidance from your higher power, your sponsor or co-sponsors, and your inner child. Just remember this, the two most important things when it comes to working the steps are 1, that you start, and 2, that you finish. After finishing the steps, my group decided to continue working together on the laundry list workbook. That will be the topic of the next video. And that wraps up this video, which is meant to be food for thought. If you got something out of it, please click like and subscribe and forward to a fellow traveler. I'm Robby B. Thank you for listening, and as always, keep coming back.